We're back with former US Navy helicopter pilot and now author Ryan Pote, and we're here to talk to you about, I guess, a day in the life of a helicopter pilot in the US Navy. Can you share this with us, Ryan?
Yeah, last time we talked, we were kind of talking offline that I had all this like random video footage of just, the little mundane things that we have to do on the ship and the stuff that doesn't necessarily involve flying or some of it does that I took to kind of like show my wife and family, what it was like. And it's funny because it just sat there and no one's actually ever watched it. I think you're the only one who maybe has ever
Yeah.
gone through it, but I
Oh
figure maybe
well.
one day my kids will watch it and be like, "Oh yeah, I don't want to do that job."
Mm. Yeah. So talk us through it. Where does it start?
In the Navy, you can either go two different ways, like the big carrier type deployments, or you can do small, what they call small boys, or like small ships, which used to be frigates, and I was on frigates, but there's also destroyers, cruisers. That's in the U.S. Navy. All um, it's also decom now, but the HMS Lancaster was a British frigate, so there's like the same kind of like
Yeah.
model ship. They have a small flight deck, usually one or two aircraft, and they'll have what's called a detachment. So like the squadron will be at home, and there'll be like 40, 50 pilots in a squadron, an American helicopter squadron, and a bunch of air crewmen and then maintainers and stuff. And like on a typical carrier deployment, the whole squadron goes on the carrier. So they'll
Mm.
go out, they'll bring like five or six aircraft, they'll bring all their maintainers, all their pilots,
Huh.
everybody will go to the carrier. On a detachment squadron, they'll send out these little detachments. So at any given time on a squadron, half the squadron will be home training. The other half will be on five or six different deployments. And it's kind of common in a detachment squadron like I was in, HSL 49, the Scorpions, that you wouldn't even know people. So, you'd be in the squadron for years and there'd be people that have also been in the squadron for years, but you were always on different cycles and you never actually met each other. And that happened quite often. So you'd go out with your small little group of six pilots. It would be two senior pilots, one OIC, and then three junior pilots who would be training to become like aircraft commanders and mission commanders for future deployments. Um, and then we'd have three air crewmen that we'd bring, and then we'd have about 20 maintainers and like a senior chief or something running the maintainers. And then for us in our mission, we had like Coast Guard, special operations detachment. But for the most part, it's just that, and you're kind of set apart from the ship. So the ship, has all of its own, things. But then we report to the ship, and we have our own chain of command. We have our own, we have what's called an OIC, or an officer in charge of the air detachment, and they're where our chain of command ends, and then they talk back home to our
Mhm.
squadron CO back home, and we're just kind of along for the ride on the ship. Clearly, like we're respectful of the captain of the ship and everything like that, but they don't really have much jurisdiction over us. And like for instance, when we take off from the ship, there's always a pilot who takes command of the flight deck, and we kind of have control of the ship, in a sense. Like the ship can't turn or move or do anything when we have control of the flight deck. Um,
Mm.
so there's a lot of inner workings that are different, and there's a lot of like bad blood. Like in the Navy, Navy pilots wear brown leather. So like we wear brown leather shoes, we wear brown leather jackets, and that's like a carryover from the World War II days.
Mhm.
But the rest of the Navy wears black leather. So they have black leather shoes, black nylon jackets, and it just created this difference in culture. They call it the brown shoe Navy versus the black shoe Navy. And like in all
Huh.
reality, we all get along. But there is some resentment because when we show up to the ship, like we have our scheduled, rotations. So we'll do 16 hours awake, 8 hours of sleep because we need crew rest.
Wow.
Whereas the ship will do sometimes, 12 to 18 hours, sometimes even 24-hour shifts I've seen. Um, but we have mandatory like crew rest cycles. So, we'll split into three different crews, and then each crew will have an 8-hour wake window, or excuse me, each crew will have an 8-hour window where they're allotted to fly, and then an
Right.
8-hour window where they're allotted to support the crew that's flying, and then an 8-hour window to sleep. So if you work that out, you really only get like two meals a day. you don't get to, sit for all 3 meals that everybody else has. So you're already eating less food.
Mm.
And there's the resentment comes when, like, we go into port, or we go, the ship has some kind of like all hands on deck kind of, like, training, or little things that nobody wants to do, cleaning the ship and stuff like that. Our job is to maintain our aircraft. We're also studying while we're there. So, like, as a junior pilot, in that 8 hours that you're not flying, that you're supporting the flying crew, not only are we in combat at the flight deck, in maintenance, but we're also studying for about 3 hours a day. And that's, while we're deployed doing missions and stuff. So we just have a different life than they do. And yeah, so it creates a little bit of tension, at times. And you just have to figure out kind of how to navigate that. Overall, I mean, life on a ship, at least on a small ship, is not really that glamorous. It's like, I tell people it's kind of like camping in an RV that's not a nice RV.
Right.
And it's not a nice RV and doesn't have, like, all the plug-in, electricity, and if
All the Gucci gear.
ever done. Yeah, there's no water hookup and gray water system. So, there's very, on a frigate, they balance the ship with the on a frigate, it, like, there's only a single screw in the back, and because of that, it tends to lean to the side that the propeller turns. So the ship always cants to the left, and it just always sits like that. So, like, when you're walking around the ship, if you're going forward, you're always kind of leaning into your left side, or if you're walking back after the ship, you're always kind of leaning in the other direction. And you get used to it over time, but like when you're taking showers, like, you notice it the most because the water sloshes from one side to the other, depending on where you're standing. And water is like a premium on a small boy. So, like, nowadays, like, the modern ones have, like, reverse osmosis water makers and things like that. The older frigates, like I was on, didn't have desalination water makers. So we would take on fuel at port and then take on water. And when it was out, it was out. We didn't have anything left. So depending on when we were gonna be able to go back into port, they would start rationing and metering the water. And they also use the water and the fuel to shift in the internal systems in the hull of the ship to balance out the weight of the ship. So, because you have fuel on one side, water on the other. So as the ship burns down gas and water, it starts to become imbalanced. So they can transfer them from one side tank to the other to balance out the ship. But what that tends to do is reduce the amount of water that you can use, or the pressure, or if it's even usable, depending on, the direction you're going or the sea state. So there were a lot of times when the water just didn't work. You'd be in the shower and you had to be very quick because people were, like, timing you, and and there was no hot water either. It was well, there was hot water sometimes, but it would be, like,
right?
Scalding hot. It would be scalding hot, so hot that you couldn't even really get in it. But you'd be, like, completely soaped up, and then you'd try and turn the water back on, and it wouldn't come on. And you'd have to just wipe off all the soap, and leave that way. So
Wow.
that was kind of an interesting thing. Like, your laundry is boiled in water that's heated from the engine exhaust. So there's just a big vat of water, and there's no soap involved at all. Your clothes just get put into a boiling vat. And that's how you get your laundry back. And that's actually, ironically, like a way that pilots in our community would know that you were, like, a salty aviator, that you've been to sea a lot, because it changes the fabric of your flight suit. It removes all the fire retardant material that actually makes it, help you. And it makes it really soft and a different shade of green. And then the zippers are usually coated black, but they're brass, and they have, like, this fireproof coating around them that keeps them from getting really hot. But the boil removes that all. So you're left with this shiny black zipper that is actually really smooth. It's like a nice smooth zipper that doesn't catch. And so, when you would see a pilot with a light green flight suit that has lost its flame retardant sheen, and they got that brass zipper, you're like, oh, they've been to sea. Their clothes have been boiled for like 7 months. So those are like little isms like about the community. Um, but yeah, living on a ship, like as an officer, like we don't really get like officer berthing like most other ships. Like I remember when I was on the HMS Lancaster, for instance, like you go into their rooms and they have like nice big staterooms. The bed, they have nice big bed, and they're not in bunk beds, and they've got a desk, and they've got nice high ceilings. Um, and like the officers on a U.S. Navy ship, a little bit smaller room, but they have like their own beds and their own things. But the air detachment, we don't, even the officers. So we're in like these little. It's a converted closet, and it's got what we call tuna cans, like three stacked um, metal beds that you got about this much room from your face and we're above you, and you slide into it, and you close a curtain, and you put up straps so when the ship is rolling, like you don't fall out. And especially for the top bunk, like I've fallen out, and a couple people have fallen out before. It's not fun. But it's just a little hallway with those beds, and at the end of the hallway, so to give you an idea of how wide it is, it's like as wide as a sink in like a small bathroom, just like a little sink, because
Yeah.
that's what's at the end. There's a little sink at the end and a mirror so you can like shave and stuff, and then just the bunks on the sides and a door. So it's pretty tight. And then your bed lifts up, and underneath it is like your space to put all your stuff. Um,
Wow.
so it's pretty tight. You don't really like hang out in there. You go there to climb into your rack and just you know um, sleep. We would bring nobody does like sheets and stuff like that because that's too much to deal with. So we usually bring a sleeping bag, um, and it's just easier that way. So everyone just brings a sleeping bag and a pillow. Um, and but the space in your bed is the only place on the entire ship, even the bathroom, where you're alone or you have the semblance of
Yeah.
like privacy. Because even when you're on the toilet, like there's people all around you underneath the sides. Like there's not
God.
there's not like a defined door. So yeah, you get used to just not being alone. So when you finally do
Yeah.
get to be alone, you kind of relish that moment to just lay there and have like some quiet. So that's where you like read or something like that. But yeah, when you come home, it's like it's funny. You would think that you just wanted to like go and see everybody and do all this stuff, but the biggest thing I wanted to do when I came home from a deployment on a small boy was just to be alone, outside and alone.
Yeah, I can
It's kind of
imagine.
funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
but food. So like food. Um, so we would get to dine with the captain if we were one of the pilots. Everyone else ate downstairs, which is like a big mess hall, and it's kind of you just like take your tray and you go down, and they just like serve you the food. A lot of times we would just go down and eat with our crew because it's faster, and you know it's weird because like when you fly with your enlisted personnel, like the rank structure breaks down completely. Like there's
Yeah.
no more. Everybody respects that you're the one who's in charge because you have the experience. Everybody can feel it. You don't need the rank on your shoulder. Everybody can tell that you know what you're doing and you're leading them. Um, so it creates a very interesting dynamic. So like we don't really like to separate ourselves between like officer and enlisted like they always do. So we
Yeah.
typically will eat together if we can, um, and because we're friends, so we'll all just hang out together. But breakfast is the best meal on the ship because you get actual eggs and you get it like real food. Everything else on a small boy, not on a carrier, and not on a British ship either. Because when I was in the Lancaster, they had like a French chef, which was kind of awesome. But um, they do these things where they just get prepackaged, frozen,
Mm.
you know, food. No, there's no cooks anymore in the Navy on small boys. And on carriers there are, but small boys is just prepackaged food, and there's a set menu. They purchase the menu, and it lets us stay at sea for like 40 or 50 days or something like that. And
Wow.
um, and it's just you can tell it's like microwaved food.
Yeah.
But breakfast is real food, real eggs, real bacon. Um, so everyone always really doesn't want to miss breakfast. But you typically will eat that first meal when you wake up, and then you probably won't get the next meal, but you'll get the last meal of your cycle. So
Mhm.
whatever your cycle is. So you'll usually be flying for your meal in between. So you get used to being a little hungry, and then uh, water typically gets rationed. So you fill up your water bottle like whenever you can, and then you just kind of like
The
you don't ever want
1950s
to
or
like.
something.
Yeah. These are these old ships. They're
Christ.
just Yeah, man. It was very very interesting, and the ship would break all the time, like all the time. There'd be fire. There were so many fires. So we call like class Alpha Bravo Charlie fires. Charlie fire is like an electrical fire. An Alpha fire is I forget. A Bravo fire is like actual flames burning combustible material. We had which is rare on a ship. We had Bravo fires so often that we'd all be sitting at the table eating, and the sirens would go off and everybody would run through in gear, which would typically be like a really big deal on a Navy ship. It happened so often that we would just keep talking and be like, hey, can you pass the salt? Like, just no
Like
big
it's normal.
deal.
Yeah.
Another fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
The freezer's flooded on the lower decks with 11 feet of water. That's normal. It was only 6 feet yesterday. Like big,
Yeah.
big deal. Um, so this kind of stuff would happen all the time. Um, our frigate once broke down for 3 days, no power, no propulsion, in the middle of the South Pacific off the Galapagos Islands. We
Ooh.
drifted for 3 days waiting for an airplane to drop us apart. And when they finally dropped us the part, they just kicked it. They kick out like a can with a part in it and a little parachute, and it floats down to the water and hits the water. Well, it's supposed to be packed in a bunch of foam and like stuff like that. Some idiot just put the part in the can and just dumped. So when they went out to get it, we were all like, like we were in World War II or something, hanging off the side of the ship, like, yay, like we got our part. And then they bring it back, and it was just shattered. So we had to wait like another day to get,
Oh my God.
another part to fix the ship. Um,
Can I just
Go ahead.
interject here? Before we get on to, because obviously you sent me some amazing clips. I want you to go
Yeah.
through, that kind of thing. But before we get into that, obviously you said like you don't really get your own space. Does that not drive you mental?
Um, yeah, it can be a little. That's the hardest part, is not
Yeah.
having that time to yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like even though you get your 8 hour window to go to sleep, you're pretty much busy for 16 hours.
Mm.
But like even though you're exhausted, most of us would only take like 6 hours, because you
Mm.
want like that hour or two just to listen to music, write a letter at home,
Yeah.
read a letter, read a book, just anything to have some time to yourself. Watch a movie. A lot of times you like bring your laptop and you could just like watch a movie in there. Like when I was doing it, we still brought like DVDs and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it would drive us nuts. But sometimes we would find like a little corner of the ship that maybe nobody was in, like, and we'd get like one or two of us together that are really close, and we'd like watch a movie. It'd be like going to the movies with your friends.
Mhm.
And so being with like two or three people was way better than being with everybody. But you're sitting on the floor in some dark corner of the ship, like,
Yeah.
and it's really loud on the ship all the time. There's always noise. So like even with it turned up all the way, you still can't really, three people can't really hear it. So
Yeah.
there'd
Yeah.
always be someone who'd have like a better speaker that they could plug into your computer or something.
So yeah, if you can get
So
into like,
yeah,
because obviously you sent me like I think 3 files, and they're quite fascinating.
yeah,
There, the checklists, and there's
yes,
quite an interesting
yes,
Chinese thing up. So if you can just go through them, because
yeah,
I
yeah,
can't wait to put these clips in. So
sure,
go for it.
sure. So when you're not flying, so like even when you're flying, like a pilot will say like, oh, I have 2,000 hours or whatever. But like at least I can speak for Navy helicopter pilots. Whatever that number is, you can multiply that by easy 5 for the amount of time you're actually in the cockpit. So like, we count flight time from when the wheels are off deck to when the wheels come back on the deck. So, but the amount of time that you're actually sitting in the aircraft far outweighs the actual flight time. So like, we'll typically go out to the aircraft, whether it's day or nighttime. Nighttime gets a little freakier because you're like right on the edge of you're climbing all over this aircraft, and you're right on the edge of the ocean and pitch black. But you go out as a crew and you pre-flight the whole aircraft, and like it's unique because the aircraft on a small ship is folded up and stuffed in the hangar, and then it comes out on a railroad track and everything's opened back up. And when you're constantly like, we call it cracking the tail, you fold the tail in, you fold the wings back. A lot of problems can happen with the intermediate and tail rotor gearboxes when you do that. So you're constantly like pre-flighting the aircraft, making sure it's ready to go. And then you plug it into power, and then you power up all the systems, and you start, trying to make sure the air. Now you only have 2 aircraft, and typically one of them is working at any given time. So you kind of have to go figure out what's broken for the day. How are we gonna, can we do the mission that we need to do with what we have at sea? So you'll go out and you'll do all the pre-flight checks, but because those aircraft, you don't have a lot of parts and a lot of resources out there, you'll have to request parts and, get them delivered to the ship. It takes a long time. So typically our normal pre-flight sequence will be almost double what it is because we're always dealing with little issues. And I sent you some videos where I was just wearing a helmet cam for like the whole thing. Yeah. And you're constantly stopping and having maintainers come up and trying to help you figure out, can you fix it or can you get around it? Whatever the issue is. A lot of times it's with the mission systems because they get so overheated that they just, start to, just like your home laptop, it gets too hot, starts doing weird things. And our old aircraft did not have air conditioning. They have what's called an air condenser unit, which basically just blows cold mist on you instead of like a actual air conditioner that dehumidifies. So it actually humidifies more. Yeah. And so you're sitting in that bubble, where we were close to the equator. So you're just, the sun is just beating on you in the middle of the ocean. And you're in full long sleeve, flight suit with all the gear on. It gets ridiculously hot. So and so we'll typically keep the doors open just to get some airflow. But you do those pre-flights, and they typically take a long time. And then you finally, something's broken, and maybe you have to let them fix it and then come back, or wait there. And then when you land the aircraft, there's a whole sequence that takes hours, which is after you shut down the aircraft, the pilots are actually responsible for folding the aircraft with the maintainers. So there's a hydraulic system that'll hook up. Yeah, so there's a hydraulic system that hooks up chains, and then the pilot goes down to this little hardened shell on the flight deck, which is called the LSO shack, which is where we launch the aircraft. But your pilots are the only ones who are trained, because we're responsible for the aircraft, to what's called twist and straighten the aircraft. So there's a checklist, and there's lines painted on, and they've done the math and the geometry for you. So someone will say, hey, you're on the red line and your tail is to the left of the blue line. So you'd look at the chart and it'd be like, those corresponding, orientations, and then it would tell you what to do. Forward twist to port, and then, back. And you'd do what it says, and then the whole aircraft would move violently, and then, they would tell you where you're at now, and then you do it. You just keep following the list, and it would eventually straighten the aircraft on the track, and you get what's called a center light, and then they could fold the tail and drive it into the hangar and stuff it away for the night, or for the day, or whatever was going on. So that whole evolution is like very scary, and you're always afraid you're going to break the aircraft. It takes hours. The senior pilots typically train the junior pilots to do it. The junior pilots to do it on deployment. And the senior pilots don't do that, because we're like the maintenance officers in charge of the maintainers, or the operations officers who are dealing with the ship or in combat, running the mission. So there's a lot of different duties that we do. So the other one is the landing safety officer. So I put a whole video of that. So when you're not flying, you're awake, you're kind of the flying crew's lifeline to the ship. So you do everything. So you're if they have an emergency, you run to the radio. You're on the radio with the checklist, trying to help them through their emergency. If you are if their mission is airborne, you're in combat, and you're kind of the liaison, if you will, almost like another crew member, just trying to make sure that you've got their back on the ship side of everything. And typically we're a lot more trained in like the air and how to effectively use us for the mission. So have a bigger voice in combat, because we typically are the ones planning the missions to begin with. And then, so if the aircraft is launching or landing or coming back to get gas, you go down to that little shack I was talking about. It's this little armored bubble like on the flight deck. And you're responsible for, you're in comms with the ship and you're in comms with the aircraft, and you're the person who's setting everything up for them to land. So when you're in there, you have all this weather data. You have these monitors that tell you the pitch and roll of the ship. You get all the wind information and sea state information, and you tell the ship, okay, I want you to turn to this heading because I think it's going to be better for their recovery. Smooth out the deck of the ship. Because what a lot of people don't know is, for a helicopter and for any ship, aircraft get lift when they're moving forward. So it's actually more dangerous to come to a ship that's not moving at all, because that ship will be bouncing all over the place. The best thing that you do is you drive as fast as you can forward. And that forward motion through the water creates wind that lets the aircraft come in above stall speed, and it smooths out the rotation of the ship. So it's what we call a smoother deck. And so whether it's at night or in bad weather or daytime. Well, I took videos, during daytime because it's beautiful and it's nice, and at night it gets a little hairier because you're just in this dark bubble with a little red light and trying to do it all. But the aircraft, whoever's flying, really relies on the person on deck to get them on over the deck, and then to make sure that they have the best possible, the smoothest possible deck they could have to make a safe landing, and then also make adjustments if there's a specific emergency that they have that they need you. And then our aircraft, once they get over the deck, you can't just, on an old frigate with the Bravo aircraft that we flew, the deck was so narrow and it was about 17 feet above the water, and we had what's called a tricycle landing gear, so the tail wheel was not all the way back. So we had kind of this unstable situation, and I told you the ship was always kind of canting to the left. So when the aircraft lands on the flight deck, there's a very small angular moment on our aircraft, which means like it doesn't take much to flip the aircraft over. So you have that rocking of the ship kind of tossing you a little bit. You have kind of a narrow deck, and then you have this small wheelbase. So all those things combined, and if you bounce off the deck, if you hit too hard, we have wheels. All those things together can flip you over in an instant, and it's a very unstable landing environment. So we have to trap. So we're one of the only naval aircraft that trap. The British have a similar system. At least the Lancaster did. I'm not sure. The Lynx would come over this. They had the same problem in the Lynx, and so they would come over this grate, and they would have a harpoon that would like shoot down and go through the grate and pull out hooks, and then they would ratchet themselves down to the deck. That was kind of a cool system. But you could tell that you have to shoot that little harpoon through this basically metal mesh. So sometimes it wouldn't work. So it would take like multiple shots to get it through. Well, for us, we had just a big probe that would come out, and we had a box, a hydraulic box with these beams, we called them, that would close. And so the landing safety officer's job, or that pilot that's in there, is to make sure that they're over the box, and you call it out to them. So when they line themselves up, and then you tell them, down, 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 or whatever. That's just the signal that they're over it, and they give it a shot. They go down and try and get it in. It's not very big. It's like trying to think of a reference size.
So do we say down here? Let me check the bridge real
Or
quick.
about this, like the half the size of a desk. So like half the size of a normal desk. Not very much room, and the probe is like like a baseball, like a really thick baseball bat or cricket bat. And so it's nothing's very big. But once you land in there, we close the beams immediately to lock them in so that they don't roll over.
Yeah.
And if they miss the trap, we tell them up, like right away. Like we can tell if they're going to miss it, so we start saying up right away. So they start bringing power on and come back up, do it again. At night, it gets a little more interesting for them. But we also will call them back, like if they're getting too close to the hangars with the rotor arc. We'll tell them they got to come back. So we'll kind of be like their safety kind of guide for that. Yeah. So and then and then we kind of control the launch and recovery. So we take control of the flight deck. It's called like green deck or red deck. So red deck means they can't land. Green deck means they're cleared to land, but I also have control of the ship. So the ship can't maneuver or anything while, the flight deck has control. So we kind of, transfer that back and forth. And then we're the first ones there to call for like a crash response, or if there's a fire or something like that, we're reorganizing all that. And then if we're swapping out crews or they're getting gas, we're kind of the ones that take care of all the logistics. We're like the party planner. They're coming back and they're like, hey, I got a guy who needs to go to the bathroom. I need more ammo. I need fuel. I got a problem with the computer or this. I need a maintainer ready to go with this part or something. So you kind of handle all the little logistics, like, hey, we're really hungry. Can someone bring us some food? I need some more water. So because typically they'll land after a 3.5 hour flight, get gas, take care of all the logistics, whatever they need to, and then take right back off for another 3.5 hour flight. And then, so, we're managing all that. And then we do the turnover for whatever missions we were doing. We turn over all the, if you're hunting someone or on an interdiction, we'll do like the pass down for the next pilot coming on and kind of give them all that information. So yeah, it's just like a little dance of scheduling. And sometimes, pilots get sick and you fly when you're still sick. So, you're trying to just, your job when you're not in the aircraft is just do everything you can to support the ones who are up. Cause you were just flying. So now you're kind of at the tail end of your day. And then in between that is your time. So like, if you're like, there's two pilots. So one of you is in combat, one of you is doing deck recovery. So, when they're recovering, the person in combat gets time to themselves. And then when they're airborne and they're doing their mission and you're the one who was doing the deck work, now that's your time to yourself. So that's your time to yourself to study or to get a workout in. There's like a gym on board that's got like free weights and stuff, but that gets kind of scary because, I told you about the rock of the ship all the time. So if you're lifting weights and it rocks wrong, you're going to like tear a shoulder. So a lot of us actually don't do that. They have like rowing machines. There's treadmills that are aligned with the ship. So like when the ship rolls, you're like running uphill, and then when the ship goes down, you're running downhill, and there's lots of bikes and stuff like that. And there's like pull-up bars and stuff. So we do what we can. Try and get like a workout in. And everybody also knows, you talked about like being alone. Like when you're doing some kind of workout, even though there's people all around you, you can put some headphones in, and everybody treats that as sacred. Nobody really bothers you. Even if people are walking by, nobody says anything to you. Everybody's like really careful to just not bother you. I never really thought of it before until just now, but yeah, that's how people would be about it. So working out was kind of like your little sacred time too.
Well, if we can move on here, Ryan,
sure.
Because you sent me some footage, this is fascinating, about landing on a Chinese ship. How did this come about?
Yeah, so I did RIMPAC in 2014, which is, we like stopped over to do, it's an international training mission with all the Pacific partners. And it's in Hawaii. And this was the first year that China was going to be allowed to participate. But they violated the rules by sending a reconnaissance vessel that hung out on the outside of the whole exercise, just collecting data. And everybody knew that what they were doing. So we were actually, the entire RIMPAC was supposed to be a time for us and our partners to share tactics and like train together. But we were actually all told to not use our real tactics, our real, words, call signs, equipment. So like we had to make up fake stuff the whole time. It was such a poor, geopolitical, like whatever. I mean, way above my pay grade, but it just seemed like a giant waste of money for us all to get together and not train really. Like we did fake stuff the whole time. But we knew what they were doing. So there was a Chinese warship that we were actually bringing. Well, actually, I probably shouldn't say who we were.
Yeah, don't say. I don't want to get anyone in trouble.
I'll leave it at that. But we were bringing somebody to the ship for a particular reason. So we got to land on it, and my crew actually became the first helicopter pilots to land on a Chinese warship.
Wow.
I don't know about commercial ships, but a warship. So it was a unique situation, but we got to do it. You see in the video, it's a beautiful day. They had if you watch it slowly, there's people with like shoulder mounted cameras, like they're videoing everything all the time. So we dropped them off, and then this person had to go inside for a reason, and we could have just flown around in circles, but we decided to just keep doing landings on the boat because they wanted to film it, and we were like, fine, you can film it, I think it's cool, so I'm just gonna keep doing landings.
And were you in the MH-60R at the time?
No, I was in the SH-60 Bravo.
Oh, the Bravo,
and
right, okay.
They sent us because they didn't want to send a modern helo that they could collect off of. Like the Romeo has really advanced sensors, and we were about to retire, and we were all analog, and everything was open source on us at that point. So they sent us. So that was really the only reason we got to do it instead of somebody else. But just the way that just to see how far advanced we are just in the safety aspect of things. Not just us, but all the Western way, the way the British does it. We all do it the same, but they, will send their guys, straight into the rotor arc, which the front of the rotor arc, for people who don't know, is the most dangerous spot. The rotor blades at any time could dip below 5 feet. So, you could get your head chopped off in the front, not the sides. But so the safest place to enter a helicopter is from the 90-degree side.
Right.
And you don't have to like duck. You see in movies, people are always like,
yeah, like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking. This is like 14 feet above you. You're fine. But in the front is where that rotor arc can dip and legitimately decapitate you. But they just send their guys in, like straight ahead with no goggles on or anything, and like I just remember thinking like, man, that's a little dangerous for those guys.
Was there no like swapping of like, I don't know, gifts or anything like that, or was it all serious business?
Yeah, we brought them stuff. We brought them like patches. So typically when we land on somebody, we'll bring them out like patches, coins, literally like right off of our, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't like bring like brand new ones. You typically will give them your dirty old patch that you had on. Because that's just how we've always done it. We also, there's this funny thing, and the British do this too. It's called tagging. So we have stickers, and they'll typically say funny things on them or whatever, and we always bring them with us. And whenever we land on someone, you always try and tag their ship and or their aircraft, and they'll try and tag us. So like,
I think we call it zapping over here.
Yeah, oh no, you're right. I forgot. It's called zapping, and I remember landing on the Lancaster, and they zapped us, and it was like a tea bag. So they told when we land back, there's like 4 things on it, and it's like, man, they teabagged us. Like, yeah, thank you for that. It's been a long time. Yeah, zapping. So we zap. The Chinese didn't do that to us, but we zapped them a bunch of times.
And how long was that exercise for, or supposed to go on for?
RIMPAC was like 3 weeks, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. It's a long exercise, and the whole time, we had to do fake stuff.
So did you have to? Could you still fly regularly? You just have to change the names of certain systems or not use certain systems, or was your like ear and eye always open to like, well, they're over there?
Yeah. So some systems we couldn't use. like certain radars and certain like data links we couldn't use, but we would still do all the missions. So if we were supposed to do like a sub hunting exercise with Argentina or something like that, we
Right.
went out, but we weren't supposed to use our actual tactics to hunt it down. And so we were like hunting like real subs, and we were, but we didn't want to transfer like how we actually did that. So and so they would go out there and be out there, and we would just pretend to kind of. It was weird. It was weird.
Yeah.
We pretend to kind of find them. And it, yeah, it was just a strange. There was really no training benefit for anybody involved.
Right. Okay.
Except maybe the exercise of like willingly deceiving somebody else while still, doing it. So like we were still hunting the sub, but we were just not sharing everything. We were doing it in kind of discreet ways. So yeah, I guess there was still some benefit there, but
yeah.
It was cool to land on the ship. It was weird because like if you look on the top deck of the ship, like some people have like rifles and stuff. It's like they weren't like aimed at us or anything, but it's like, okay, come on.
Yeah, you're aware of it.
Yeah, like this is like this isn't like on him, like some really high level people coordinated this, and we're just landing.
Yeah.
So anyways, no, it was cool to do it and see it, because actually, funny story, before, like a week before this happened, there was a point where all the ships from a bunch of different countries, China included, were going around in circles. And it was a beautiful day outside, and they moved the gym to the top deck so you could work out outside during the day only. So the gym was closed at night, but during the daytime they moved it to the upper level so you could be out in the sun and like work out up there. So they moved all the free weights, everything up there. And so like we're going around in circles, and nobody's flying this day. We're literally just, everyone's waiting to get, all the ships are waiting to get gas. So they're all just going in circles, and we pass each other on the other side. So we pass the Chinese ship, and like almost everybody is on the top deck working out, and they're blaring music. And so with the Chinese ship passes us and sees us all working out. So the next time we pass them, there's like a megaphone, and everybody comes out in uniform, in the same uniform, and just starts running circles around their flight deck. And they're just jogging like in circles. Like it felt like they were just trying to be like, oh yeah, we work out too, and like just go around in circles. And it was really funny. It wasn't like there wasn't any animosity. It was just funny.
To wrap up this interview,
sure.
I've got a couple of last couple of questions, just kind of funny ones before we get onto your book and just where you are now with it. So someone said to me, were you allowed to eat where you slept? Could you bring a pot noodle? I don't know what the equivalent of a pot noodle, like noodles in a cup type thing. Could you do that? And could you bring your own snacks in if you wanted to get away from people?
Yeah, so you could bring your own snacks, but there was, minimum space in that, we called a coffin locker, under your bed. And you had to have all your normal equipment and gear and like toiletries and stuff that would last you, until you got into port. So you had to have at least 60 days worth of, toothpaste and all that stuff. So you only had minimum space. But yeah, if you could fit snacks, like, we would try and get like protein bars. If we went into port, I would typically buy like loaves of bread and jars of peanut butter, and I would just crush. I became addicted to peanut butter sandwiches and coffee. You can always get coffee on the ship, an American ship. So there's always coffee. It's not very good. It's very thick, muddy coffee. So I would typically water it down a little bit, because there's no like milk or anything. Cream, all that stuff spoils. So you got to get used to drinking just black, muddy coffee. And then I would just have these peanut butter sandwiches. So that's what I would do. And then the water on a small ship, because it's not reverse osmosis, desalinated water, we take it on and they put it in tanks. So they have to treat it with a chemical to make sure. So they treat it with bromine. So it's brominated water. It tastes awful. It's kind of like iodine almost, but tastes awful. It makes your stomach sour. So we would all put like packets of Crystal Light or like lemonade or something like in our water all the time. Yeah, so you'd fill
Yeah.
your water bottle up and you'd put some kind of packet of something in it so it didn't taste bad.
And when you were saying you have to bring on your own toiletries, are you one of them men who kind of like me, where you have like 7 in 1 for everything? It's car cleaner, shampoo, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I'd bring one bottle. Oh, and you don't bring a bar of anything because the floor of the shower is absolutely disgusting. So you
Mm,
don't anything if it drops, it's gone forever. So like
right.
I would just bring a bottle of like pure Castile soap that you can brush your teeth with, shower, clean
Yeah.
varnish off of speedboats, like all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And then I, you can pay for no shave chits, and so you can not shave for an entire deployment, but you have to pay the ship's mess. So it's like you pay the ship's fund that like pays for what we call like steel deck picnics, where like every Sunday the captain, if we weren't on a mission, if we
Like
were
a
on a
rest day
mission,
type
but if
thing.
we yeah, they would pull out the grills and they would, all that money would pay for like burgers and stuff that they would buy at the previous port and plan to give everybody a steel deck picnic. You'd get like one every month or something, like they'd try and fit it in where, everybody would get to play, cornhole and there'd be music and um, it was it was always a good time. It was always a good time, but a lot of times it would get ruined because they typically do it out on the flight deck because that's the most room, and then all of a sudden we get a flash mission and they'd have to clean everything up and everybody would hate it.
Oh,
Everybody would hate
nightmare.
us.
I can
Yeah.
imagine. Did you enjoy working and living on a boat or ship?
Um, I did. I mean, we used to write letters to ourselves, journal entries to ourselves, future, because you always remember something differently, right? You remember
Yeah.
it like in a nostalgic way. We would write journal entries to ourselves that would tell our future self, like, this is awful. You don't want to do this again. Like, um, but no, in retrospect, I did. It was an experience. And I think if you went into it with the mentality um, of like, I need all these different toiletries and I need all this and I need all that, you're going to be pretty stressed out. But if you go into it with like, I'm fine if I don't shower for 3 days, this is a temporary thing. I'm not going to be in the best shape of my life. I'm going to be hungry a little bit. Like, I don't know. If you just have the right mentality about it, it is fun. But you also have to be very um, every single day is the exact same, like to the minute. So you have to be very good at um, like sticking to the exact same schedule, exact same things you're eating. Everything's the same. So
Yeah.
some people don't like that. I particularly thrive in that environment when I don't have to think and everything's the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
But some people go absolutely insane, and you see them go insane. So
It sounds like, yeah, obviously, the pinnacle is obviously you get to fly, which is why you were there. So, it's you
yep,
take the bit with the sweet, I guess. But yeah,
yep.
Ryan, I'm obviously follow you on Instagram, and it seems like the book's going really well, Blood and Treasure. So tell us where you are with it right now. Is it doing well, or what's happening for the future?
Thank you. Yeah, it is doing well. I think previously I told you that it was going to be available in the UK, but I guess I was wrong. They haven't sold the foreign rights to it yet, but they're
Mhm.
kind of holding off on that. But no, the book is doing really really great. I've gotten some great feedback. The reviews have been absolutely fantastic, and it's done. I haven't like become like a bestseller or anything like that, but I was never disillusioned to that. But it's done well enough that there's going to be more of them, and I've got
Brilliant.
more deals for it and other stuff. Yeah, yeah. So that's really great, and actually Jack Stewart, who you had on,
Mhm.
he's a friend of mine, and we become closer since. But we actually just wrote a book together. Um, two Navy pilots became authors and wrote a choose your own adventure book for kids called Spy Pilot,
Nice.
which is about to go out, but it's for the brand Choose Your Own Adventure, and we're hoping it takes off as like a little series of pilot books.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so it was super fun to do. We just kind of did it together, and it was a blast. So, but yeah, my book's doing great, and yep, And I think I told you a little before, but I'm going back to a squadron now for a job that I took. So now I'll be at a UAV test squadron as their safety officer. So I get to kind of be
Nice.
back into the aviation world a little bit. It feels kind of nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can remind our viewers where we can find your books and you online as well, that'd be great.
Sure, yeah, ryanpote.com, and then all the social media channels at Ryan Pote Books, and it's available in ebook, hardcover, and audiobook. It's available on Spotify. It's available on Audible and all that stuff as well. And I don't think it's really, like I said, I don't think it's released in the UK yet, but I think there's always a way to get something, like I said, on Spotify or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
think you have to actually buy the actual physical book.
Yeah, well, absolutely. All the links will be in the description below. But Ryan, always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you very much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, and congratulations on getting engaged and
Thank you.
and all that stuff. And yeah, I've been following your show too. It's a blast of a show. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.